It's really clear what you were both attracted to in terms of the theme and what the movie says, but what was the attraction for each of you in digging into these particular people?
Well, that's right. I'll carry your purse. Ben Bradley loved Katharine Graham. He loved her deeply, in a love that came from a deep, deep respect and an understanding of all that she had been through and all that she had accomplished and the weight of the burden of being the owner of what had been her father's and her husband's newspaper. He viewed her as this magnificent example that if she had been a man, it just would have been a different contest. And so every time he came to loggerheads with her, and they fought quite a bit. It's from a place that is beyond respect for your boss. It's beyond an understanding of all that is at stake for her. When Sally Quinn and I had a couple of meals together, and we were talking about this love that Ben had for her, and she said, you know, you've never said that you loved her. He said, I didn't love her. I didn't want to bang her. I wanted to, I admired her. She was a great lady. She was a powerful force. And at her funeral, Sally told Ben, he said, you have to tell the people that you loved her. And it was the only time he did, and he broke down. He had tears in his eyes when it went in. To have that as the backbone of all the rest of the story that goes on in the First Amendment and the position of the women and all the kind of like fabulous suspense story, hunt, cat and mouse hunt that goes on with Pernilla. That's great stuff. And to get to do it in a Steven Spielberg movie where everybody has a great part and everybody has a moment that they invest in. Even the girl in the Supreme Court who's late for work, she just had a couple of lines that day. She didn't have a whole scene that Steven turned it into that. So you get to do that. But in order to show something that is a bit of a secret, that is hidden and yet is the absolute, it's part of the DNA of what the entire story is. The love that Ben had for Kay was something that we broached right off the bat.
But I really thought that what was most interesting is that it was respect. It was a relationship between a man and a woman that wasn't based on any kind of other feelings, It was a friendship that was so deep, it was like family. And that respect is, I've never seen a movie about a friendship. You made Nora's movie, where can a man and a woman be friends, right? And the answer was no. But they fell in love.
Else.
Yeah, they had to do the other thing. But this one interested me because it was about the working atmosphere, whether men and women can. This is so important right now to think about the atmosphere in which men and women can deal with each other. Especially if the woman is the superior. You see in that scene where they first have breakfast, she treats him like he's the boss. And that is the way it usually works if a woman is the superior in a working relationship. There's some accommodation to the ego of the man, not to undermine it or make him feel bad, or all the things we do.
You're telling me this.
Just telling that.
I have no idea what you're doing for myself.
This is the truth. And I just think it's so that to watch that evolve through the course of this challenge that's put to the two of them together, where their mutual reliance on each other and realization of what each one is bringing to this. His bravery and his bravado and her bravery. And those two things are, it's just kind of gorgeous. I didn't really realize it till I saw it today. But I love that.
You know, you don't overplay any of what could be the obvious present-day parallels here. I mean, if you really, was there ever any temptation to go more toward the White House? I mean, we literally see them at a distance, but never more than that. And I'm so curious because you have so many elements. You have say the White House. You have the Post's sense of competition with the New York Times. I mean, how was it finding the balance of all those things?
Well, these papers, the New York Times and the Washington Post, they were mining for the truth. They were mining for the truth. You know, the Nixon White House was killing the truth, and I didn't think we needed to spend any time telling the audience what they already knew. It was more important to us to show these explorers trying to get to the truth and then trying to get it out there for all of us to read. And so that was the most important aim. I mean, there were times we flirted with the idea of maybe going more into the White House, but they already made the Nixon movie, and you know, I wasn't that interested in doing Nixon 2. This was much more a story about and the relevance is all up to everybody to strike their own balance between the news today and the news then. But obviously, you know, sometimes bad things happen twice. And
February, and we started shooting the 1st of May, and we were done by the 3rd week of July. That's how fast it happened. I had a bit of an advantage. I knew Ben Bradley. I hung out with Ben Bradley some back in the day when he was still Ben Bradley. He aged and settled into dementia. And, but I knew Sally, his wife, very well. We had some fascinating dinners and lunch, and I actually also met Kay Graham for the first time on the day she passed away. It was a very fluky thing. She was at the Herb Allen conference in Idaho, and we had lunch together with a bunch of other people, and we said so long, and she drove off on her golf cart, and she passed away within the next 12 hours. Not to bring a downer on what is just a rock and sock 2 hours of grab your ass entertainment, but the opportunity to jump into Ben Bradley, both the man that I knew as well as I knew both Ben Bradleys. I had worked with Jason Robards before, and he's there, and Ben himself. And his magnificent book, A Good Life is what he called it, and it was. He had just a rabid infection for what he did for a living, and I love the competitive aspect of he didn't want to suck hind tit in our own nation's capital, for God's sakes. He wanted to be. He wanted to compete. He thought Washington, D.C. at the time was sort of considered a second-tier city because it was only a company town. But he said, no, it's the most important city in the world, and we're going to be the #1 paper. We're going to be the most important paper and the most important city in the world.
But the Washington Post was not the most important paper.
Oh, the Washington Star.
Yes.
The Washington Star.
There were 3 or 5 papers in Washington.
Yeah. The thing that gets me, and I don't know if you did too, but look how complicated it was to put out a newspaper. That linotype machine alone makes it wonder how did they put that thing out every morning that they could read it at 6 o'clock a.m.
Ensemble cast, including people who aren't up here tonight, like Carrie Coon and Michael Stuhlbarg and Jesse Plemons and Tracy Letts. But Matthew, you were in a sort of unusual position in the movie because you're kind of isolated, from everyone else. So did you kind of only know what your part of the movie was, or how much of a surprise was what you saw tonight?
an enormous surprise, and I was overawed by what I saw. But yes, I was fortunate enough to read the whole script. But contractually, I think they wanted to isolate me or just keep me with beautiful bouncing Bob Odenkirk here. No, that sort of, it lent itself. You know, that level of isolation lent itself, and I think helped. It certainly helped me because I felt like the outsider. Or at least Bob made me feel like the outsider.
Haven't you ever heard of America? Yeah.
Yes, I learned about it in school once.
You know more than I do.
And Bob, some of your strongest moments, most exciting moments in the movie are also when you're alone on screen, you know, particularly making those phone calls. What was it like sort of not having someone to play against for those moments?
No one to compete with. I had a great time doing those because I got to really work with Steven closely, and the dropping the coins and dealing with all that and the pressure of the phone call was really fun. And watching Steven find that great shot with the reflection and the feeling like it was reminiscent of some great movies of the 70s that he loved touching base with, I think. Right, Steven? I don't want to speak for you, but you ran up to me and went, "It's like a 70s movie!"
Well, yeah. I said that. I said, it's like a 70s. I said, break out the zoom lens. Let's get that thing working again.
It was really fun. Really fun.
Here's another piece of trivia. The lady in the Volkswagen, when they're driving off with to copy the Pentagon Papers, it was a small advertising agency that was owned by Linda Resnick, the present Linda Resnick, who is now the owner of both the Pomegranate Juice Company and Fiji Water. That was featured not too recently in a little bit of product placement that we all were able to see in memes. But I think it's just kind of fascinating that she was really a cute girl who was the girlfriend of the guy who was driving the Volkswagen. But she owned a copying machine, and so she let everybody in, and now she's Lady Fiji Water.
You know, the scenes that there were so many scenes history. Really, it's low-hanging fruit. I mean, some of the greatest stories that haven't yet been told are the low-hanging fruit of our own collective history. And there were so many things that we could have done with this film that we could have put in the film. One of the most crazy things, and I just didn't think anybody would believe it, and that's why we didn't use it. But Daniel Ellsberg, you know, had to copy 40 volumes. It took him months and months and months to do this. He only takes 4 out the first time he goes to his own place of employment, the Rand Corporation, to take out the first volumes. But a couple of times when he went back, we don't go back and forth at all in the movie, but the second and third time he went back, he needed help, and he got his kids to come with him. And his 8-year-old daughter, was bored, and she said, "Well, look, take a scissors and you cut off everything that says top secret and page numbers at the bottom of these documents." And she just sat there and cut off all the top secret documents at 8 years old. I didn't think anybody would believe it. That I was supposed to be working on for the last 2.5 years when I got a script sent to me by our producer, Amy Pascal, by a 31-year-old writer who wrote a spec script called The Post. And it was a kind of remarkable moment because I was sent the script and then I met with the writer. And very, very soon after that, it just felt like this was going to be a movie that I was going to want to make immediately while I was still working for Warner Brothers making this other movie immediately. And this was something that, with Warner's permission, because I was it was a special effects film, and so Alan was working very hard to complete the effects I had the time. And so it was really 9 months from the time I read the script by Liz Hanna to the time we showed the movie to all of you tonight. It's been
This is astonishing. I think the people here, because there are so many of you in the industry, I think they appreciate how incredibly unusual it is to be able to make a movie that quickly and pull all the elements together. Now, you've done that a couple of times before. You know, I know Munich was a very, very fast turnaround, but this is probably a speed record even for you. I'm wondering, like, what what do you need that makes it possible for you to get a movie done on that kind of timetable? Like, what has to be in place?
Well, for one thing, I need a motivational purpose to make any movie. And when I read the first draft of the script, this was like something that couldn't wait for 3 years or 2 years. This is something that I really felt we needed, a story we needed to tell today. And that's really all it took. It took that and the fact that I have a tremendous team that's been with me for the last 22 years of my career. You know, same editor, same cinematographer, same production designer, a brand new young costume designer I work with for the first time. but I'm not, and then Josh Singer, who came in and did the rewrite, and I think it was, we formed a family also quickly.